What's going on, everybody? My name is Jake. Welcome to the Haunted Beard. Well, I've got another video here for you today in my Tales from the Crypt playlist. And in case you've been following along, or if you haven't, I've been going through this series. It's my very first time going through this show and been going through and ranking them season by season. And so today I'm looking at season 4. My last video that I did, you guys seem to like kind of the tier list style more than the traditional ranking video, so I decided to continue with that. I think I like the tier list style better myself as well. But anyways, so what we're doing today is Tales from the Crypt Season 4, and I'm going to be doing a tier list ranking of all 14 episodes. So without further ado, here we go. All right, the tiers here are the same ones that I used last time. We've got Happy Crypt Day to me. This one's a Crypt Keeper, Hello Boils and Ghouls, Betty Croker's Cookbook, and Ready Your Vomit Bag. So, episode 1, the first episode of season 4 is called None But the Lonely Heart. And this one for me is going to be... It's kind of right in between one of these two. So I'll go ahead and drop it here, and this one's a Crypt Keeper. It's pretty good. There's some fun to be had. So this one stars Treat Williams, has a little bit of a performance by Tom Hanks in it as one of the minor characters. But I guess kind of one of the cool things is this was actually directed by Tom Hanks. And this one tells the story of this guy. He is a con artist, and he spends his time conning old women out of their money and out of their life insurance, as ultimately his plan is to kill them so then he can get their life insurance money. And that's what the episode opens up with. You got Treat Williams, who's this, kind of younger middle-aged guy, and, he's hitting on these old ladies, and they're all flattered by it, of course, that this, young, good-looking guy would be interested in them, but of course it's just a con. This one does a pretty good job kind of mixing in the comedic elements. Ultimately, the setup here is he's getting ready to get indicted in like a week or 10 days or something like that. But of course, he wants to do one final job so he can, make one big score and, flee the country kind of thing to escape the indictment. Even though his kind of, partner, is warning him that it's not a really good idea. But of course, the greed takes over and he decides to get one more job. So anyways, things kind of play out from there. And like I said, this one does a pretty good job mixing in some humor. This one too has a pretty fun kill, a creative kill. Somebody gets killed via paper shredder, which I don't know that I've seen before. I mean, I probably have, but no other examples immediately sprung to mind. So that was kind of cool to see a guy get killed via paper shredder. And then also it's got another pretty good kill where a guy gets thrown into a television set and he's like getting electrocuted as he's dying. And then somebody, takes the remote control and turns off the TV, and then he stops getting electrocuted. I don't know. It had just kind of that nice, dark sense of humor. So this one's got some pretty good humor. What ends up happening, and I won't spoil it or anything, but Treat Williams ends up getting these letters, these anonymous letters. Somebody knows what he's up to. And we obviously find out what's going down at the very end. But yeah, pretty good episode. Like I said, got some good comedic elements, and it's got a pretty fun ending. This one, too, also has a little bit of a very small performance by the famous boxer, Sugar Ray Leonard. And I wish they would have implemented him a little bit better. But as it sits, it's a Crypt Keeper, so that's where I'm putting it. All right, next up, episode 2 is This'll Kill Ya. And this one I'm going to put in, I'm going to go kind of in the mid here, the middle, Hello, Boils and Ghouls. This one started out really good. I was hooked in right away, but it ultimately ended a little bit disappointing. This one stars Dylan McDermott and Cleavon Little, who you may know from Blazing Saddles. This was actually his final film or TV performance before he passed away. But anyways, this one has such a great opening scene and a great setup where we see Dylan McDermott dragging this dead body into a police station, and he's like, I'm dead and this guy killed me and I killed him. And it's like, what in the world just happened, right? And then the episode flashes back to however much time earlier. And here's the thing. I'm not typically a fan when episodes do that. However, as this episode started, I was hooked. I was like, what a great way to, pull us in. And then it goes back and I'm like, okay, but I'm hooked. I'm really curious to see how this all plays out. And turns out Dylan McDermott is this guy. He's this doctor scientist. He's got his team that's working on some sort of breakthrough drug that's going to, help people and heal people and all that stuff. But he's a complete and total jerk, and he overworks his employees, and he doesn't really listen to their opinions or ideas and everything. And then ultimately, crazy stuff happens. But my issue with this one is, even as good as it was starting off by going kind of towards the end and then jumping back, it ultimately kind of ruins the rest of the episode, because it's one of those things where it's like, again, we know exactly where it's going, and that's the very end. There's nothing beyond that. And so also too, this one does have kind of a typical sort of little twist in it that I predicted. And so it started off with a really good hook, but ultimately was a little bit disappointing. So that's why This'll Kill Ya is right there in the middle. All right, next up, we got episode 3, which is On a Dead Man's Chest. This was directed by William Friedkin, who of course directed The Exorcist. Let's see, On a Dead Man's Chest, though, ultimately I'm gonna put this one at mid tier as well. Let's see, I'm gonna put it right in front of This'll Kill Ya. Here's the thing with this one. So this one starts off, it's about this rock and roll band, and they're kind of coming into their own, sort of making it big. And the lead singer is having this rift with his guitarist, because his guitarist has now this girlfriend. I think they just got married, and the lead singer can't stand her. And so, it's kind of the Yoko Ono thing, I guess, right? And so she's kind of created this rift, and now the band is starting to kind of fall apart and stuff like that. And ultimately, it leads to the lead singer going to this weird tattoo shop, and he gets this tattoo from this mysterious voodoo-esque type tattoo guy. And it turns out the tattoo has some, I'll just say, supernatural, elements to it, I guess. This is another one that I feel like it kind of feels a little formulaic, right? Having now watched 4 seasons of this show, I'm noticing some of the kind of typical formulaic stuff where most of the episodes are, well, maybe I won't say most, but there's a fair good amount of them that are kind of decent, enjoyable enough, but they at least have kind of a nice twist, fun, crazy sort of ending, where it's like most of the episode you're like, all right, and then the last 5 minutes you're like, okay, that was pretty cool. This is kind of one of those examples where, it's decent, and then the ending, you kind of finally get a little blood, guts, and body horror and stuff like that. And so the ending almost elevates it into the next tier, but I'm gonna keep it there in the mid. But the ending is quite a bit of fun. Ultimately, where it all leads to goes into some pretty kind of wild and crazy supernatural body horror type directions. But overall, it's still a mid tier, but has a pretty fun ending. All right, next up, episode 4 is Seance, and this one for me is gonna go, I'm gonna put it down here. It's not awful, but I didn't really care for it that much, so I'm gonna put it in Betty Croker's cookbook. This is another one that involves a con man, although it's a con woman and a con man. They're kind of a team, and they try to con this guy out of his fortune. He's come into this inheritance, and they're trying to con him out of his fortune. And this one started off interestingly enough. It's another one that kind of starts at the end and then works backwards. But at least in starting kind of towards the end, it doesn't give anything super significant away. At least I didn't think. I liked how this one started off, kind of gave me a little bit of film noir vibes, has a nice kind of jazzy soundtrack to it. You get a little bit of like a, femme fatale type thing with Kathy Moriarty. But the way that this one kind of flashes back and then tells its story to lead up to the ending, it kind of just felt messy to me, and sort of just kind of jumbled, clunky, messy, and ultimately not really that interesting or engaging of a story. It's another one that you get to the ending and, of course, you get a little bit of a horror twist sort of thing, but it's still overall just not super memorable, kind of messy, and just, yeah, there's not really a whole lot to say about this one. So there have been worse episodes in the series so far, but this one is kind of just an unmemorable, not great. So that's where Seance is going. Next up, we've got Beauty Rest. This is episode 5, and Beauty Rest for me is gonna go up here in, this one's a Crypt Keeper. This one's a pretty good episode that I enjoyed. So this one stars Mimi Rogers and Kathy Ireland. And this one is about, they are these two roommates. They're both aspiring actresses. This one starts off with such a hilarious and ridiculous scene where Mimi Rogers is auditioning for this perfume commercial. And it's got this very sort of, strong businesswoman vibe to it. And it's for this perfume called Ballbuster, which is just so absurd, but also kind of hilarious. Anyways, she thinks she nails the audition. She is then notified by her agent that she didn't get the part and her roommate got the part. And so then you find out that there's this tension between them where, Mimi Rogers is just jealous and hates her roommate because her roommate's getting all the parts and she can't catch her big break. And then she finds out about this beauty contest that her roommate is involved with, and it's rigged, that she's automatically going to win. And that just sends her over the top, and she's like determined to do anything to win something. And so she gets involved in this beauty pageant. And this is, I don't know, this is a good one. It kind of has a little bit of like a trashy feel to it, but the main highlight for me is the performance by Mimi Rogers. She's quite good in it, and I really enjoyed her performance. And even though her character is kind of despicable, she's just entertaining and fun to watch, and she really pulls off that character quite well. And this is another one too. It has just a really nice, twisted, whacked out, horror loaded twist ending to it that I didn't see coming, and it was just very satisfying. And so, yeah, I liked this one. I like just kind of that. Mimi Rogers just really sold it for me. And so I had a good time with it because she just carries this thing and made it all quite entertaining. So, yeah, that's why that one is a Crypt Keeper. All right. Next up, we got episode 6, What's Cooking? And What's Cooking for me is, let's see, we're going to go, I'm close to putting it in the top tier. It's, yeah, what the heck. We'll throw What's Cooking in the top tier. This one is pretty fun. This one stars the late, great Christopher Reeve and also Judd Nelson, a.k.a. Bender himself from Breakfast Club, of course. But anyways, yeah, this one's a pretty good one. So this one is the story about this husband and wife who own this restaurant, and it's doing really poorly. Business is terrible. They only serve squid. And that's Christopher Reeve is the guy. He only serves squid. And he is determined to make this restaurant work and make it a success, only it's not. But he's finally convinced to start serving steaks. And there's something unusual about these steaks. And I'll leave it at that. I won't get into any more specifics. And really the main kind of thrust of it has to do with what they're now serving. And this one is just kind of a good sort of classic Tales from the Crypt, where you get good, legitimate, gnarly horror that is really well infused with the dark humor. And I think that's really what kind of makes this one in the top tier. It's just a really good blend of good horror. You get some good, gnarly horror, and also some really dark, messed up humor. And that's kind of just the perfect sort of recipe for a really good Tales from the Crypt episode. Judd Nelson, as I said, is in this. I really liked him. I really liked his character. I don't want to get into any specifics, but this is definitely one I would recommend you check out for sure. I don't really want to say much more because I feel like anything else I'm going to say could maybe give away some of the surprises in this one. But yeah, good performances and just a really good horror humor mixture. And yeah, it's a good one. All right, next up, episode 7 is The New Arrival. And this one for me, let's see. This is kind of another sort of mid-tier one for me. I'm going to put this one back here, right behind This'll Kill Ya. So, New Arrival for me, this one starts off, it's a radio show. And there's this child psychologist who does a radio show where parents call into him and, asking him how to handle their problem child and, what to do, ask him for advice and things like that. Only he's he's losing his slot to this new, shock jock. And so he's trying to keep his job. And so he decides to do his first ever house call. This woman calls in. She's got her kids just a complete nightmare. So he goes in with his, his producer and somebody else, and they go to this woman's house to, see if they can help her with her child. Only there's something more supernatural and, horrific at work here. And yeah, this is another one, kind of like what I said about Dead Man's Chest. Overall, the episode, it's all right, it's decent but it's got kind of a fun little ending to it. This one has a bit of a haunted house element to it. And they get trapped there, so it kind of almost turns into this sort of escape room type scenario. The highlight for me in this one, though, was a unintentionally hilarious moment where one of the characters gets killed by a fan blade that actually rappels down from the ceiling. Only there's actual blades attached to the fan blade. But what made it so funny is what is very clearly a fake body that then falls down the stairs. I just got a kick out of it because it looked really cheesy, but it made me laugh, so I enjoyed it. But anyways, the mother's performance in this though is pretty good, kind of creepy, and so I thought that was pretty good. And like I said, the ending has got a nice little horrific twist to it, and yeah, when the identity of the child is revealed. And so overall, it's a decent episode. It's got a couple cool little elements to it. The ending's not too bad. So yeah, it's going right in the middle for me. All right, next up, episode 8 is Showdown. And this one is going all the way up at the top for me. And in fact, I'm putting it in first place, at least so far. And this is one that I'd be willing to bet I would probably have higher than most people. This one's a Western, and I like Western. I'm not a huge diehard Western fan, but I do like Westerns. There's a handful of them that I really, really love. I mean, some of the classics, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Once Upon a Time in the West, are some of my all-time favorite movies outside of the horror genre. So this one had kind of that Western vibe to it that I really liked, and it's not so much horror heavy as it is. There's kind of almost a sci-fi-ish fantastical element that this one takes on. So the general setup here is there is this gunslinger who is trying to escape the law. And he ultimately reaches this point to where he has to confront his past and all of the people that he has killed in his past. And what I really liked about this one is this feels like a Twilight Zone episode to me. This feels very reminiscent of that classic, Twilight Zone, Rod Serling stuff that I could just totally see this episode fitting right inside some of those episodes. And Twilight Zone's one of my all-time favorite shows ever. And so this one really I don't know, it kind of just hit a special little spot in my heart that really gave me some Twilight Zone vibes. And so I was just a really big fan of this one. If you like Westerns, this one too has this one's got some nice cinematography and just nice shots. It's got kind of some classic Western stuff in it. You know, there's a nice shootout scene and a nice showdown scene where the gunslinger and the law officer are standing, you know, in the middle of the road in this, you know, desolate little town and stuff. And so it kind of checks some of the boxes there. This one was directed by Richard Donner, written by Frank Darabont, who wrote Shawshank Redemption. So yeah, this one, it's just really good. I really like the visuals and cinematography. I like the story. I like where it ultimately goes. It definitely is lesser on the horror, but it's still kind of in that sort of supernaturally fantastical sort of realm. Yeah, I just really liked it. And yeah, I really liked it. So there you go. That's why it's in my top spot so far. All right, next up we got episode 9, and that is King of the Road. And King of the Road for me, I unfortunately was not too big of a fan of. I'm going to put it down here in Betty Croker's cookbook. And this one was kind of a bummer. The big highlight and the best part of this is that it stars a young Brad Pitt. And I'm a huge Brad Pitt fan. He's made some of my all-time favorite movies. So there's kind of I guess, sort of a cool, fun component of that, you know, kind of seeing him in one of his early roles before he really hit it big. But ultimately, the episode didn't really provide all that much. So anyways, the setup here, Brad Pitt is this young hot rodder, drag racer, street racer type guy. And, you know, he's a rebel. And this one definitely kind of gives you a little bit of Fast and the Furious type vibes. You know, he's street racing and he's like the best there ever was. And he's trying to track down this old kind of legendary hot rodder. And that's played by Raymond J. Barry. And he's this guy known as the Iceman. So Brad Pitt tracks him down and he tries to convince him to race him, to prove who's the greatest sort of thing. But of course, he has kind of ulterior motives. And this one, there's not really any horror here. It's kind of a bit of a thriller-ish, crime thriller-ish. But I just found the story kind of lackluster, not really that interesting. It goes in exactly the direction you would expect. It's pretty predictable. The ending's also pretty anticlimactic and kind of dumb. And so, yeah, it just didn't really get much out of this one, unfortunately. So that's really all I have to say about it. So anyways, that takes me to, let's see, next up we've got episode 10, Maniac at Large. And this is another really good one. Man, I borderline want to put this one. Yeah, I think I'm going to do it. I'm going to put this one actually in the first spot in front of Showdown. I really like this one. This one was directed by John Frankenheimer, who's directed some classics, including the original Manchurian Candidate all the way back in 1962. And this is a good one. I really like the setup here. So like I said, Blythe Danner, she's this librarian. The whole thing takes place in this library. And her boss is a jerk. And so there's a little bit of conflict there, but the main setup here is there's the serial killer on the loose, and she gets more and more terrified. She ends up having to work a late shift that night, and she's completely freaked out because she thinks the serial killer is going to attack her. And I just really like this one. Her performance is good. I like the way this one was shot and some of the editing. It has a bit of kind of a classic movie type feel, like a classic sort of thriller from sort of back in the, 60s or 70s type thing. Just the way some of the shots are, some of the sequences are edited together. Some of the camera work is pretty nice too. Yeah, this one is a really solid story. It's got some good performances too. There's one character in particular who is one of the guests in the library who he just knows too much about serial killers in general, sending her just like major creepy vibes. But I really liked his performance, and yeah, it's got kind of some nice suspense to it. The main highlight though is the ending, and I won't say anything more, but it's really good and really surprising. Did not see it coming, didn't predict it even a little bit. And so I was genuinely surprised and did not see it coming. So yeah, the ending's really solid. I like the setup. I like kind of the one little location. And it's just directed really well, and it's a good story. So there you go. So, all right, next up we got episode 11, which is Split Personality. And let's see. I'm gonna put this one here in Hello Boils and Ghouls. We're gonna put it. We're gonna put it right there in the front. Yeah, this is kind of another one, sort of mid. This one though stars Joe Pesci, who I love, and he's really good in this. He's definitely the best part, but overall, it's kind of another one. It's decent. It's got kind of a fun little ending. So. He plays another con man. That was definitely a recurring theme with season 4. That's the third episode that has some sort of con man element to it. And he plays this con man, and I like his performance. He's just good in general. Joe Pesci is like, he fits in really well with Tales from the Crypt. I just wish that they would have had a better kind of story for him to work with, because Joe Pesci is one of those guys who can genuinely be funny and is like genuinely hilarious. I'm thinking like Lethal Weapon movies. He's great, but also genuinely terrifying, right? In something like Casino or Goodfellas. And so he has a good mixture of being a really scary dude, but also can be really funny. And you kind of get a little bit of that here. You get a little bit of the scary Joe Pesci, like he's about to fly off the handle at any moment. But you also get a little bit of some of his humor in there as well. So I like that. He's really good. The story, though, is just okay. So he ends up meeting these twins, and he decides that they're very wealthy, and he decides they're going to be his next target. And he figures out a way to con them by making up a fake twin, that he himself is a twin. And so he alternates like 1 month long trips that he has to leave, and so he comes up with a fake twin in order to marry both of them so he can con them out of their money. And yeah, like I said, the story is just okay. It's got some humor in there. There's a scene, Joe Pesci is singing that song "I'm Too Sexy." They got Joe Pesci singing "I'm too sexy for my shirt, too sexy for whatever," which is just, it's so ridiculous and also pretty hilarious. And again, it's like, this is the guy in Goodfellas who is, he'd like blow you away in a second, and now he's singing "I'm Too Sexy." So yeah, it's got some humor in it, but yeah, the story, it's fine. It's okay. It ends in a way that is darkly humorous. It's another one where it's like, yeah, the ending's kind of fun. The rest of the episode, it's all right. So Pesci makes it worth it, but it's nothing all that memorable. So yeah, it's a middle of the road one. So anyways, next up we have episode, let's see, what is that, 12? Episode 12 is Strung Along, and this one is going to go, I'm going to put this one right here. This one is really, the ending is kind of what makes this one. So this one is the story of this guy. He is a puppeteer, like a marionette puppet. Only he is now older, and he's kind of reminiscent of the good old days. He's not as successful. He doesn't really have his career anymore. He's a has-been, I guess is the best way to put it. And so you got this guy. He's depressed. And he wishes he could get that success back that he used to have when he was younger. And he gets a letter in the mail one day about this TV program that is reaching out to him because they want him to bring back his puppet, his marionette act. And he's all, excited about it. So he ends up hiring this intern to help him with his new act. And this episode really kind of threw me for a loop. There's an aspect of this episode. So he has a wife who's a little bit younger than him, and her behavior goes from like one extreme to the next, like instantaneously, which I found very jarring. And it really kind of threw me off. And so there was kind of a portion of this episode where I was like, it just wasn't working for me. I was like, what is this? Like, what's going on? And then ultimately what it culminates to, it kind of makes sense of everything. And the ending of this episode is so absurdly ridiculous that it's kind of great. I would even say almost like so bad it's good kind of thing. It's just so ridiculous and completely unexpected. I thought I had this one too kind of figured out, and I did partially, but then it goes like 2 or 3 steps even beyond that at the end. And so the ending of this one is just kind of lunacy. It's Looney Tunes. It's crazy. So, yeah, don't try to make sense of it because you won't. But yeah, anyways, there you go. The ending of it made it worthwhile at least. So I kind of enjoyed it overall because of how it ended. So there you go. All right, next up we've got Werewolf Concerto. This one for me is gonna go down in, I'm gonna put it in Hello Boils and Ghouls, but I'm gonna put it at the back end. This one started off intriguing enough. This is a werewolf episode, which this is the first, there's technically been another werewolf episode so far in the series, but this is the first one that's kind of a very blatantly obvious werewolf episode. And this one stars Timothy Dalton, James Bond himself. It also stars Beverly D'Angelo, Reginald VelJohnson. And this one had an intriguing setup because it is set up almost like this Agatha Christie style And Then There Were None type, murder mystery, only the murderer is a werewolf, where you got these guests at this little vacation place. I guess it's like a hotel sort of resort type thing. And it starts off with one of the guests getting killed by a werewolf. And so, there's kind of a whodunit aspect, but it's just barely fleshed out, like hardly at all. And I know it's a TV episode and they're only working with, 25 to 30 minutes, but it just felt so light on the mystery component. And then when you get the ultimate reveal, it just feels a little lackluster. So Timothy Dalton here is decent. It has an okay sort of werewolf body transformation type scene with some practical effects in it. Certainly not anything great, but for a TV episode, it's not bad. You got a little bit of blood and guts in there, but the ending was kind of unsatisfying, and yeah, it just, I felt like was a missed opportunity. So it's okay, and that's why it's in the mid-tier Hello Boils and Ghouls. Okay, that takes me to the last episode. And the last episode for me, whereas in Season 3 they saved the best for last, unfortunately Season 4 saved the worst for last. I'm going to put Curiosity Killed right down here in the very bottom. Ready your vomit bags. So this one stars Margot Kidder, and she is part of this married couple. She's the wife, and they're out on this camping trip with with some friends of theirs. And they are, the main couple, they are just this old, bitter married couple, bickering, arguing, insulting one another. It's just awful. They have a horrible relationship. And she overhears her husband and then the husband's friend in the RV talking, and she thinks they have this plan to get rid of her and murder her. Only she is mistaken, and the plan that they do have is something kind of totally different than that, and I won't give anything away, but this one was just kind of obnoxious and not all that great. First of all, the old person makeup is pretty terrible, and it's one of those things that's like, okay, these are clearly younger people with old people makeup on, at least in the case of Margot Kidder. And so to me, it's like, I automatically am like, oh, well, they're obviously going to show the young person, so you can kind of figure out where it's ultimately going to go. But the characters are just obnoxious. And the ending is like the most random thing. It was just so unsatisfying in like how random it was. And yeah, I just didn't enjoy this one. It's just obnoxious characters, not really a very interesting story. Certainly nothing we haven't seen before. And it just doesn't do anything all that memorable. And I don't really have anything else to say about it because it's just not very good. So there you go. But anyways, Yeah, that wraps up Tales from the Crypt Season 4 tier list. I will say, overall, this one I feel like was a little bit of a step back from Season 3. I think overall Season 3 was better than Season 4. I know I had at least 4 or 5 episodes in that top tier for Season 3, whereas I only had 3 of them here. But still some pretty good stuff, some stuff too that I enjoyed. So yeah, that wraps up Season 4. Obviously, Season 5 is coming up next. That is all I got for you, though, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. If you got anything out of this video, go ahead and do me a favor. And do not click that subscribe button unless you want to be haunted by the beard.